Yeet. Hey everyone, look at all the people who I've dragged out here on a Friday night to talk about movies. It's episode 92 of the Friday Night Movie Club, and I got these two with me here once again, and we're talking about not one but two films that I'm pretty sure is going to get us all fired up here tonight. So joining us here from yet another Waterburger experience is Mr. Rick Aragon. How you doing tonight, Rick?
I feel a little run down. I did so much today, but yeah, I'm just here to talk about a movie that's probably going to be in my best and my worst. Which is which? We'll find
Really?
out.
That's
hmm
interesting. We'll
hmm
talk a little deeper into that here. Then also a good buddy, Mr. Rob Motto. How you doing tonight, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good considering the movie I had to watch today. It was an experience or an anti-experience. I'm not sure which.
Yeah, I got a lot of things to say about one of these two movies. If you guys watch Comics Division show last night, I got a lot of my thoughts out on that one. But even then, I feel like that there's still a lot more left to say. So I think we should start off with probably the movie that's going to get. I don't know. I think maybe you guys feel a little better about this film than I did, and that's our first film, Megalopolis, because this is a film that we were all excited to watch because of the absolute shit show associated with this film. There was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes with Francis Ford Coppola and him trying to produce this movie, shoot the film, the back and forth with the studio, finding investors, distribution. It was like this felt like that this movie had probably more I say behind the scenes peril behind it than any other movie that I could think of in quite some time. I mean, the only thing one that I can kind of think of is maybe a little bit of Sound of Freedom, but that was just more of Disney shot the movie than didn't want to release it. I mean, this seems like it was just a mess from top to bottom, but you have all these big name actors in it. You have, a legendary director and writer behind it. So what is kind of the basis of this film, and how do exactly we get to this point? This is something that was being shot around COVID, so this is even before I think the vaccine came into play, and it spent a couple of years kind of in, I don't want to say developmental hell because it was kind of shot, but they were just trying to shoot it around, and they didn't really find anything until Lionsgate came around. And I will say this to start off, and I want to shoot it over to Rob here for a second to ask him this. Our number one complaint with movies these days is that it seems like there's no direction, there's no passion, and there's really like nothing that's inspiring anyone. Maybe if they don't have the ability, but you aren't getting a lot of inspired films in Hollywood these days. Like you're not getting anything that feels like a filmmaker's like trademark or passion or signature anywhere in the film. You're just getting one soulless adaptation after another. Now, obviously, we rag about Hollywood doing that for so many years. This film, to me, feels like it's the opposite end of the other side of the problem, where you have a guy who has so much vision and so much those things that he wants to bring to life. However, I don't think that he realizes that in his mind, it probably seemed a lot better than it did in the final act of the film. It's like there's a lot of things going on in this movie that I knew that he wanted to bring out. We'll kind of go into more detail here, but I don't think that he translated it very well. If that's the best way of putting it together. But well, I'm going to get your thoughts kind of on the story of this film before we get to this point. What was your thoughts on Megalopolis trying to find structure of all the behind the scenes stuff and trying to find distribution? Like, what was your thoughts on leading up to the film? What made you actually want to see it in the first place?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting because I mean, these conversations that we've been having the last decade or so about,
Mm-hmm.
is Hollywood over? Is it dying? I mean, to be fair, they were having these conversations in the late 70s and early 80s. And as they transitioned away from the director as the main consideration and power and the say on a movie set,
Mm-hmm.
the studio saw it as a way of wrestling control. And the studios have basically been in control since the 1980s. And so Francis Ford Coppola really has been spinning his wheels since then. After Apocalypse Now, he's kind of made creative failure after creative failure. And
Yeah.
about Megalopolis as a finished product, it is absolutely the movie he has wanted to make for almost 30 years. He's tried to get this made for 30 years. And you talk about developmental hell. It really was because he has been trying to get the thing produced and executed. And
Even I think
I
the script that he was trying to put there, didn't that go back to like the 70s? He was trying to get this out.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I mean, the movie has had a long trajectory. So whatever you think about it, it is what he wanted to get made. And look, all the stories about the production of it and the issues they ran into and how expensive it was, not to mention like the weird stories or reports that got distributed through the Hollywood Reporter or Variety about some young women feeling uncomfortable because he kissed them on the cheek, or like there's some weird stuff about that. I expected this movie to be a complete mess, like a complete just what the fuck. Hey, it's my money. I'm gonna do whatever the hell I want, And we there are examples of this really throughout history. I mean, Last Tango in Paris is kind of a movie like that, where it's just like critics didn't even know how to review it when it came out. It was mostly negative, but you know, this is like in the rich tradition of artists who believe in their vision and they're going to make what they're going to make, and it's not about the amount of money it brings in. It's about the passion of the art form of filmmaking. Now, plenty of people will say, okay, but he didn't have anybody giving him any feedback or
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, maybe we should cut this, maybe we should have a scene to explain this. He basically is going to make the movie he wants to make, and depending on who sees it, you'll have a different experience. It'll either be too unwieldy and there's just too much shit that you don't comprehend and doesn't land, or you can appreciate the artistic effort. I'm kind of just somewhere in the middle where you know I looked forward to this for a long time because I admire Francis Ford Coppola as an artist and what he means to the world of movies and Hollywood, and the director of some of the greatest films of all time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but also understanding that, very few directors, once they make like the best of what they're known for, very rarely come back with successive efforts where, oh, it
Yeah.
meets that level. And so that's kind of where I land with Megalopolis. Is like I was definitely excited for it and was going to be open minded, but I could definitely understand if a director from the 70s struggled to extrapolate his vision in a basically a green screen world.
Or blue screen, because that's probably more expensive these days anyway. Rick, let me ask you this: what was kind of your thoughts leading up to this film about everything surrounding this film? Like, what was your initial thoughts of the stories that you heard about it, and were you intrigued to watch this based on those stories, or were you really thinking that maybe Francis had something here?
Honestly, I pretty much ignored a lot of the stories of the production because I really didn't know. I was looking forward to seeing this. It is Francis Ford Coppola, and I just imagined that it was going to be this big, grand, epic statement about something, and I really wanted to see this movie. I really didn't care. I didn't know that these women were upset about some man kissing them on the cheek. I mean,
Mhm.
that's like
I
the
mean,
most.
it's a multitude of
Yeah,
stories. Like one of the stories is that the scene that I just showed you here, that they were doing early on in the film, that he was basically trying to like sell this whole idea of like, oh yeah, it's kind of like an underground sex party. So he would like tell them to kiss and have them sit on his lap to like get in the mood and stuff like that. And it was like, oh, this is really, really weird. And it's like, well, yeah, it's Hollywood. I mean, it's probably the most tame thing that's gonna happen to you in that town. So
yeah. So, but no, I really didn't know much of the stories. The only things that I'd really heard that it was, very expensive, and that it was a lot of a lot of scenes, and it was taking a long time to make. But I really was intrigued. I was just curious as to see what the final product was, and for me, the final product is a little rambling, but always
Mhm.
fascinating to watch. I was thoroughly fascinated. So yeah, there were a couple of moments where I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. But now that we have a whole new meme thanks to Megalopolis, even if it fails, we have a meme out of it. And that's the point of success for any movie
yeah.
nowadays.
I mean, like I said, the story here is that he couldn't find funding that he wanted to get his vision done, so he invested a lot of his money. I mean, a lot of his money. Like when you hear about the deals that he made, selling some equity deals and some wines and some ownership stakes here and there, and trying to like move the money around to get this film created. He invested a lot. He risked a lot, and unfortunately, I don't think that was a risk worth taking. I mean, maybe him and Kevin Costner could team up and figure out what they're gonna do with their projects moving forward. But I mean, it was quite the risks there, and some other things that I heard is that some of the actors, like Aubrey Plaza, was one who we'll talk about her in just a second, saying that his directing style was very very confusing because the directing style wasn't very clear. They had to do like multiple takes for things, and it was definitely a style that she wasn't used to. And then you can argue, well, maybe she's not used to actually working with real directors, and that could be a problem. But at the same time, you know, you're talking about what, an 80-year-old man at this point. I mean, he is 80, right? He has to be at least 80, right? On 85. Okay, so yeah, I even lowballed it there, even for him. But yeah, you're talking about an 85-year-old man who's left to his own devices. And when we start getting into the story of this film, it feels like that the character that Adam Driver plays is essentially an avatar for Francis himself, where he's trying to create this extravagant vision of this idea that he has in his head, but nobody else really wants to go along with it. And he finds himself in more resistance than anything else. And then maybe, I don't know, he's trying to vicariously live through the younger aspects of Adam Driver's character, which we'll talk about here. But let's kind of get into this story because there's a lot mixed in here. Like, if you're looking for style, substance, I mean, there's a whole bunch of symbolism here. There's a whole bunch of Roman history, obviously modern ideals. You have some old church history thrown in there too, a little bit of paganism. I mean, there's a lot of things to this movie, and it just feels like the best way I can describe it is that someone basically threw a bunch of things in the pot, but they didn't bother to stir it. They just let it sit there. And it was like, well, I don't know if that's the end result, but this is a future, I guess, alternative future where America is now divided into a new republic, and we side of it have a new revived Roman Empire in this world, which is very, very interesting. If you guys have listened to my Sunday night shows, I'll talk about that another time. Excuse me. So you have a new Rome, which is basically New York City. I mean, that's kind of what they were trying to like play up to here. And you have this guy called Cesar Catilina, who's played by Adam Driver. He's a architect. He's the one that's basically in charge of being the new design authority over New Rome, and he has this idea in his mind to bring to life, this what he calls megatropolis, this whole paradise utopia that he wants to build from scratch. But this is causing so many problems within the government, within like the community. He has so much resistance to this. You have Juan Carlo Esposito playing the mayor in this movie, Mayor Cicero, is that his name?
Cicero.
Cicero. There we go.
Yeah.
This is the mayor of the New Rome. You obviously have a little a conflict there with his daughter, played by Natalie Emmanuel, who I definitely want to talk about here in a second. You also have Caesar's jealous cousin, played by a very, very flamboyant Shia LaBeouf, who I mean, we'll have to talk about the character, and then you have a whole bunch of other characters here too. You have Caesar's wealthy uncle, played by John Voight. You have kind of his driver and assistant, played by Lawrence Fishburne. It's a very flamboyant, over the top style of film. It even goes as far to describe itself as a fable. However, when you put all of these things together, for me, it was kind of the lack of focus. Like, I can see the seeds of the idea of what he wanted to put together, because you can tell that this is a guy who, I believe Francis is in fact Roman Catholic. Somebody can fact check me on that one just in case. But this is a guy who knows a lot about Roman history. He's a guy who knows a lot about kind of the old Roman system. So he wanted to essentially create this revived Roman system and create a futuristic world like around that. And I could see the ideas and the seeds of the ideas that he wanted for this film. Like I said, the biggest conflict here is that a lot of it is just unfocused, and I feel like that when you get like a creative like him in a room and you start throwing in these ideas, you need to have somebody that can filter and sharpen ideas. Like when somebody presents it to you, it's like, okay, I like where that's going, but here's how we can make it better. Or it's like, oh, we want to push it in this direction. Let's try to like cut the edges off of this so that the focus will be here. And I don't know if there was anyone here to be kind of that middleman to kind of be like, was there any filter between like the good ideas or the bad ideas, or the French just say, hey, look, I invested so much of my own money into this, I'm just going to do whatever the hell I want to my own detriment. I will say this, Rob. I mean, I guess we start here with you. Did you find the story to be somewhat confusing, or elements of the story to be somewhat confusing leading into this?
I mean, it is kind of throwing a lot at you. But I kind of grasped what it was about. I mean, it's very much a metaphor for where we are, the United States of America.
Yeah.
The sort of, and they even say this out loud, the parallels to Rome, and how Rome slowly collapsed over time, and overextended itself, and got involved in conflicts and wars, and so that's part of it. And this guy who Adam Driver plays is trying to find a solution to like humanity's flaws, where we have all this excess, we have all these distractions, we have all this stuff to sort of that keeps us from ever evolving past this kind of limited civilization point. And so I mean, the kind of heady ideas and the sort of the composite that's created is a little bit on the nose. You know what I mean? It's a little bit like Ayn Rand. It's a little bit like Fritz Lang's Metropolis. It's these big ideas of how are we going to fix our flawed nature and move forward. Because you have Giancarlo Esposito's character, the mayor, who secretly doesn't say this out loud or publicly, but secretly wants to see it be destroyed, wants civilization to collapse, wants it to, and the great irony, of course, is, I think it's during New Year's where, he professes how much he loves his daughter, played by Natalie Emmanuel, and how but you want to destroy the world that she's going to have to live in. It's just like in that sort of contradiction is such a key part of humanity. And I thought that was a really great scene because it sort of showcases that. But I get it. I mean, the way that the characters talk is almost like in a play, where the dialogue is very stilted and for effect, and like you have to do that because you're performing live. It's very odd here, you know what I mean? And so you have to appreciate that kind of theatricality. I think, like, I understand if most people going to see this think it's pretentious or think it's, it has this air about it, because it does. It is, in a sense, that it's an artist who's making something that's really important to him. And when you do that, you risk alienating a general audience, because they're like, what the fuck are you talking about? I try to be more open to things like that because I like that artistic kind of expression, but I totally understand if it alienated other people.
Yeah, like to me, it's like you're trying to buy into the world that's being created here because it is there's definitely an element of fantasy to it to an extent. So you kind of have to immerse yourself in the world that's being set up here. So you're trying to like here you kind of have like what's the best way to describe this? Some kind of like a town hall meeting of sorts here, but you're understanding that this is in this new revived Roman like republic here. So it's like okay, so you're trying to understand the things that are going on here and try to like buy into like the key elements of the story, but there's so many characters that are introduced like right at the very beginning that like it's not like a story that allows itself to be played out. Like you see like Aubrey Plaza plays a reporter in the film, and like she's making like these like comedic quips while like, more serious stuff is happening in between there, and it's like Adam Driver is coming in and everyone's basically treating him like he's the king, and it's like kind of like hitting on the nose that yeah, he's basically the modern day Caesar of this little like universe. Then you have Esposito's character, you had Manuel's character doing coke off of another girl's breast in like a party, and then Shia LaBeouf is doing whatever the hell Shia LaBeouf is doing somewhere on that side of. So I mean, it's a lot to take in the opening stages of the film, and this is kind of where it's like we should have been building up to this. We should have been building up to this. We should have like slowly introduced these characters. We should have slowly, given kind of the conflict at hand here, and then the next thing you know, about 30 minutes on, you're watching essentially like this giant, play, I guess you can call it here, where all of these acts of betrayals are happening simultaneously, and all of this neo geopolitics stuff going on. I say it's to me, I felt like this was a film that was very hard to follow on a fundamental level, and it wasn't because the elements are difficult to understand. It's just like it wasn't well put together. Now, Rick, obviously you have a different opinion than that. What would you disagree as far as the plot being a little bit too much here?
Oh no, I don't quite disagree with you on that. I think what it is that there were just so many ideas going on that somehow he forgot some ideas and put in other ideas. I think he was trying to have some sort of allegory between what America is and the Roman Empire as it transitions from a republic to an empire. I'm glad that Rob brought up Ayn Rand because in my notes, that's what I was looking for,
Yep.
I did write that Cassio, the Cicero, the Adam Driver character. I mean, with those Italian names that sometimes I kind of forgot who's who.
Yeah.
Catalina. I did write Randian like figure. I can imagine that he would kind of be.
And I do believe Ayn Rand was an inspiration, was one of the many inspirations of this film. Like I said, there's a lot of pieces of different type of literature and writings that all
there's
around.
Certainly a lot of things going on because, like, I did think that he struck me as, was it Howard Rourke in The Fountainhead? This Catalonia would be the type to blow up his buildings rather than have someone diminish his work. When you had that his wife who died of insulin, and we get bits and pieces of her. Is she like a ghost? Is she alive? Is he keeping her? All I kept thinking of was Reversal of Fortune, which is based on the Klaus and Sonny von Bülow case, where she also had an unfortunate accident, shall we say, with insulin. So there was a lot going on here. So there were plot points. And it's like, okay, you mentioned some of the actors that were there. One of the pictures that you had there earlier was Dustin Hoffman. Like, what was the point of his character? Why does he get a statue at the end? Why does he die? I was like, okay, I'm not quite following this. And then there's a lot. Coppola throws a lot at you, but really, in my notes, I just wrote down, it is out of control and crazed, but fascinating. I was just so impressed with all of this. It kind of reminds me a bit of something that Roger Ebert commented on, where he got someone writes it or send him a message or something that says, can you recommend the movie? And he recommended some Igmar Bergman movie, and they said, no, we just want something that won't make us think.
Have you ever heard of Neil Breen?
So they just wanted, like, I think he compared it to like wanting a cheeseburger instead of a steak. So no, for me, I know that he was trying to make some sort of comparison between the Roman world and our world, but there was just so much of it. There's one thing that maybe you guys could explain, which
I mean, literally,
beginning.
isn't the one part called bread and circus? I
Yeah.
mean, it was a little the
When you had the Vestal
lengths that he
Virgin,
went to
yeah, when you had
make
the
the
Vestal
connection.
Virgin, yeah,
Yeah,
you
it was
had
a
a
little
little
much.
Vestal Virgin there, who was a shocker, was not a Vestal or a Virgin. But maybe you guys could explain why Catalonia or Catalina or whatever, uh, why he began his speech quoting Hamlet's soliloquy. I was like, is he quoting from Shakespeare or is he trying to pass off Hamlet's soliloquy as his actual thoughts? So I was like,
N-
okay, why?
No, I just took it as him quoting Hamlet.
Yeah,
What
Mhm.
is it?
to be or not to be, that is a question.
Right,
Credits
but is
somewhere
it
in the
the
mind.
Act 3, Scene 1 or whatever? It's very famous, but
Yeah, I was just
yeah.
puzzled. When I was watching it, is he quoting Shakespeare or is he trying, or in this alternate world, are those his actual thoughts that he's trying to communicate? So that was a little puzzling. And I agree with Rob. I can understand why people were kind of not into it and maybe walking out. I don't remember anyone walking out. My friend who was with me said that he saw some people walk out. I didn't see anyone walk out myself.
And then
So
Adam Driver's dead wife is being preserved, and then he gets his eye shot out, and he needs weird, like the
yeah,
kind of shit that's in this movie is so
Yeah.
the top. And here's the thing.
This
It's some
is
of it's so entertaining that it does it almost like it's like I want to
yeah.
almost give it a pass, but I can't. In any good conscience, I just can't give it a pass. So
Yeah, this is absolutely car crash TV in movie form, and this is not going to be one for, I guess you can call them normie audiences, because it's like, if you understand the themes here, that there's a lot more, like there's a lot more to pick up on. But if you're just going in this completely blind, like, oh, let me just go watch this movie, everything that Francis presents in this film is going to go completely under your head. You're not going to understand any of it, so, which is probably a big problem with modern audiences. Because I
okay.
mean, look, Ron Honest is very stupid as well. So
1 week I was laughing at knowing how people were going to react to the substance. The other week I was laughing watching Megalopolis, knowing how people
yeah,
would probably walk out, and oh yeah, they did. So it's like I understand.
well,
Listen,
no
I
pun
get why.
intended.
Yeah,
No pun intended. The substance had more substance than this film. So
Well, yeah. Though I didn't go completely cray cray, it was just kind of unhinged. For me, it was something that was like a speeding train that was just kind of almost going off the rails, but somehow managed to hang on. It was, yeah. For me, it was like so many things going on, and I was just there to enjoy the ride. And I can be
yeah.
very harsh, but for some reason, this movie is going to get a pass for me. Just saying.
I'm gonna make a real quick point here. I've never found Aubrey Plaza attractive really in anything that she's ever done. When I saw her in this movie, I still think that I've never found her attractive in anything that she's ever done. So I mean, I don't think that's changed here. It's weird, like I said, she's introduced early on. It's like this over the top, like, because it's Aubrey Plaza, they have to have some kind of, like, comedy aspect to her. Because I can't remember the last film that she was in where she was like legitimately serious throughout the entire film. Like, if you can think of one, I can't, like, at all. And then, like, she has this romantic thing with, like, Caesar, which becomes a recurring theme in this film, that Caesar just sleeping with a whole bunch of women and getting himself into trouble time and time again. But you could tell, like, early on, like, okay, she's gonna be a problem, because clearly she's someone who's attracted to power and wants power. And it's like, how is she gonna, like, play a role into that, like, later on? And I don't know, this one, there was a lot of things that were kind of like introduced, be like, okay, I'll just keep a note of that. And then it's like, okay, wait, this is where we went with this. Like, then what was even the point of, like, what we started? Like, I started second guessing things, like, as the movie was going on. And then I can just imagine, okay, yeah, if a normie is watching this film, it's like they're probably going to have like a seizure, or they can just walk out, just like Rick was saying that they were doing there.
I mean, Aubrey. I actually liked her character quite a bit in this. She's a
Mm-hmm.
completely awful person.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
goes by the name Wow Platinum. So that's that's a fun little just complete garbage name. Look, she obviously I think it's great that she was allowed to play a character that's so despicable and so just enjoys being ruthless and going after power, and obviously makes Shia LaBeouf her whatever subservient sex slave. And then what happens to her, I don't want to spoil it, but it's just fantastic. It's like one of the best parts of the movie. And she has this ridiculous line of, like, she literally says, like, Caesar, you're very anal, but I'm very oral, and it's just like that line existing in a movie, and it's just like I know it's almost great for how trashy and stupid it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it somehow fits 2024 to a T, even if it's completely idiotic and solipsistic. So I look, I actually have always found Aubrey Plaza attractive, but let's be honest, she plays the same sarcastic, tongue-in-cheek, I'm saying something, but I'm really saying something else kind of dialogue. Like it's like I get it if people are sick of her. I've always found her relatively entertaining. Of course, she's in that terrible Agatha Marvel series
Mhm.
with Catherine Hahn, so whatever. But it's I have found her like entertaining enough and stuff, but I mean, Operation Fortune, she was kind of annoying. She kind of got in the way.
Oh, I forgot about her. That.
So every once in a while,
And I literally
she
just
annoys
saw
me.
her, and I literally just saw her like a couple weeks ago in that film My Old Ass, which was
Oh, right.
definitely not a good film either.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like there's a lot of, I mean, John Voight, it was nice to see him back in this. Shia LaBeouf, I apologize for defending him. He is a good actor. I mean, this was just like, okay, Francis, you gave me a job. I'll do whatever the hell you want.
Let's talk about that real quick here. Just this aspect. It's like you have Shia LaBeouf and John Voight, and I think Francis made like a big point like a few weeks ago or in the early stage of promotion for this film. It's like, yeah, we have actors in this film, who have been canceled before, and I wanted to make a statement about being blacklisted or something like that, right? And so he's in the film, and then John Voight's in the film. Now, Voight I just saw not too long ago in the Reagan movie. I know we didn't officially talk
Yeah.
about that one, but we saw him there in that film, and where he's doing this very, very terrible like Russian accent. But in the context of the film, it's like, okay, it's not that big of a distraction. And then you have him in this movie where he's basically playing like he's almost supposed to be like a Roman like emperor, but he's like the
Yeah, I
father
got
of
I
the
got a
emperor,
sense
which
of
is
like he was some sort of Tiberius type
Their
figure.
yeah.
haircuts, his haircut and Adam Driver's haircut was just like, are you literally Caesar? Like, you got a Caesar cut? Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I gotta play this because this is just like, oh my god. Go back. There we go. Oh, yeah, this whole scene, like, right, because you got Shia here, who's like basically in like full drag, unrecognizable, and then,
Yep.
like I said, you have John here in that horrid looking hairpiece that they had him wearing. Like, they even try to remotely make it seem anyway like realistic, like at all. And like I said, that there's definitely a complete off the rails aspect to this film too, where it's like I don't know if I'm watching someone's like greatest vision or like mental breakdown or a combination
Yeah.
of the two. That's
True.
just what it feels like.
Why
watching
not
this
both? Why not both?
film.
But it's never short on cinematic spectacle. And I have to stress that like we do not get movies like this anymore. Even if it's a train wreck, I would still rather see that than a Marvel movie. Even if like people find it unbearable to watch. Like it's
Yes.
fine. They used to roll out a good 9-10 of these every year. Okay.
Right.
And we would celebrate them for how bad they were, but it's like looking back, it's like, okay, I kind of miss that.
Maybe I'm more generous than both of you because I saw a miniseries, I Claudius, and
Is it good? Because that's on my list on Peacock. Yeah.
I have it as the greatest miniseries ever made alongside Roots. It's like it's always a compliment to see whether Roots or I Claudius is better in terms of
Multiple people have recommended that to me. So yeah,
yeah,
I
I
definitely need to check it
Claudius,
out.
yeah, in usually John Hurt as Caligula. Oh my gosh. There's one scene there where I'm literally with my mouth just drops open in total shock. I was left completely dumbfounded. John, when you get to Caligula, the Caligula section. Anyway, so when I thought of John Voight and I pictured a Tiberius type figure, Shia LaBeouf was his Caligula. And yeah, so I was not as perturbed as everyone here because I kept seeing these comparisons, and it was nice seeing John. Not John, not Voight. Not sorry if I said John Hurt. John Hurt was in Caligula. John Hurt played Caligula in I Claudius. John Voight is in uh, Megalopolis, who plays a Tiberius type figure. I like seeing John Voight kind of go insane in this, and his final scene, of course, was delightful. And Shia LaBeouf was like, yeah, he's kind of a weird type, Caligula type figure, who's also kind of vaguely political. It's like he's going to rally people. He's going to, be a spokesman for the poor people. So I don't know if he was trying to do some sort of analogy there or
I
comparison. I don't
I
know.
I listen. I really try hard to not see political connections with real life. This
Mhm.
felt blatantly obvious that he was
Yeah.
trying to connect Shia LaBeouf's character to Trump,
Yes,
and
I wrote
I
that down too.
yeah,
Even with the red caps, even
and
with the red caps.
I again I really try to almost go out of my way to just see things more generally. So that was kind of annoying, and I thought that was just like, okay, just
Well, the
just
line was that I think the Shia LaBeouf character was described as a little crazy, no scruples, and an entertainer. I wonder whom he reminded me of
yeah,
with
yeah.
that kind of description. And of course, he gets hung up like Mussolini at the end, when I think red caps are being tossed at him. So I thought, okay, well, it didn't bother me if that was the analogy he was going for. Uh,
And I understand the whole thing. It's the whole fake populism
yeah,
of
but again, I
the
think
guy
he's
who's
trying
trying to
to.
manipulate the
Yeah,
masses and
I
shit.
think he's
But
trying to connect like the fall of the Roman Empire to the potential fall of the American Empire if we don't listen to people like Catalina here, who is interested in nothing more than just making a better world and
the problem is we don't.
damn the government for trying to impose in the form of the mayor all of these. No, you cannot do this.
The problem is that this is a composite of our reality.
Yeah,
That we don't have a figure like that who is earnest in his belief in the future of humanity and a vision of a utopian place that we are sorely short of, and we don't have anybody like that in reality, and that's why this is the vision of an artist, and it's nice, but it's also ultimately naive. It's a
Yeah.
naive,
a
and
naive. It's
this is
naive
what
for an 85-year-old.
this is what surprised me the most about Coppola reading that book, The Path to Paradise, where it was just like he really is a hippie, like a rich hippie. He really like believes
Mhm.
that, even though he made Apocalypse Now and made the Godfather movies and made the
Station.
conversation might be the most pitiless, you know, like intelligence movie of the 1970s, where it's just like we're alone, we're being spied on, and this is in the mid 70s, every function of our life is spied on, copied, and there's no possible way to get
Look,
back what we thought America was. You know what I mean? The most cynical takeaway of that period. And he's a fucking hippie who thinks that, oh, we need the kind-hearted rich people, to lead us into utopia.
A
yeah,
touch of noblesse oblige
Like
in all
what?
that.
if we just submit ourselves to the Illuminati, everything would be great, right? Like,
Yeah, and I'm not saying
but
that's what his vision is, because
yeah.
it is pure-hearted. It
Mhm.
is, but it's almost childish because of that. Because it
Again,
So
doesn't take into
this
account
right here is
greed.
childish. Well, when they had poor John Voight out there desperately trying to pull that bow and arrow when he was killing Aubrey Plaza's character, I just thought to myself, "Oh my god, can you imagine just being there on set and they're like legitimately trying to act, and somehow Shia LaBeouf is squeezed in between these two characters right here, and then old man is like struggling to pull back that bow to kill a kill shot. It's supposed to
dressed
be
in
a
his,
big. It was supposed to be like a big dramatic like point to the film too. It's just like, oh
but yeah,
god,
and dressed as Robin Hood. That's like
yeah.
put the cap on it. And again, I kept seeing now parallels, maybe not parallels, analogies to other things. For example, you have when the mayor is where is has his
Cleopatra
own.
there.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
when the mayor
The
has his
serpent.
helmet, I kept thinking he looks like Salvador Allende before Pinochet manages to blow him away. As he's being besieged in the palace. So I don't know. I actually found that kind of crazed, but delightfully crazed. John Voight faking something and then surprise, I'm going to just shoot you with almost my little toy bow and arrow, and I'm going to shoot Shia LaBeouf in the ass as he's fleeing and screaming. Like, I don't know. I found that weirdly enjoyable. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that was kind of clever the way he just like takes the the blanket off and surprise, I'm going to kill you both.
Because the whole thing here is that Coppola doesn't see himself as part of the elite. As this is why some people look at this movie as like an elitist movie. And I
Mm-hmm.
said this earlier on Twitter today. I really don't think of it that way. I think of it it's just naive. It's naive in the sense that, you know, people that want to find solutions and that believe in humanity and believe in, because that was that whole ending. What that was about was like as
Yeah.
cynical as you can be. And look, we're fucked up. We're flawed. We're decadent. We are get distracted by this, you know, the smallest argument or the smallest, you know, divisive thing, and you know, we lose sight of what matters and all this stuff. It's like, but there's still enough here that we've created, that we've built, that is worth preserving, that is worth believing in the future of our children. They'll bring about a better civilization, a better place, you know, for their kids and whatever. So the continuum, I think that that's a beautiful idea. It's just the execution is so messy, is
Yeah.
so convoluted, that it's, you know, it's a beautiful mess, but it's a mess. And again, I think it's a nice
Well,
place to
I yeah,
land for the end of the movie, but it's just a little misguided.
kind of bouncing off a bit of what Rob said. One of the lines early on was, "Don't let the now destroy the forever," and I think that was Catalina who said that, because he's, you know, he does not want the, like the contemporary issues to block what should be something for the future. So, like, yes, we do have concerns, we do have homeless, we do have that, but that's no reason to build these ugly things that are going to be demolished within like a generation. We should create something that we hope will last much longer. So I get the idea that this is kind of almost an optimistic, great vision. And yes, I agree with Rob. It is a mess, but for me, it was a beautiful mess. And I he focuses on the mess. I focus on the beauty. I was just completely fascinated. There are moments in this film where I thought were visually splendid. I was wrapped up in it. Okay, when he goes to the club or the Vest or the Olympic or the Madison Square
The
Garden,
dog and pony show. Yeah, that
yeah,
part.
okay. When he's in his drug induced state and he's doing all that, you know, those weird things. Okay, I thought, okay, this is just a little too weird, just in general. But I was still fascinated. There wasn't a moment where I was bored. There were moments where I was like, what exactly am I watching? But I was still intrigued. There were just so many things, and there was one thing when they went to the Colosseum and waiting for the Vestal Virgin to perform her number. He walks in, Catalina's walking in and he's being interviewed, and he says, "You know, you had all these things with girls." I was like, "Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, who wouldn't want girls? Who wouldn't prefer girls?" I turned to my friend who's gay, and I just said, "Well, what do you think? You want to try girls? You know, just like once?" Like, and he just started laughing. But I again, I found this endlessly fascinating, and so yes, it's a mess, but it's a fascinating, beautiful mess. And yeah,
Just
I mean,
hearing
there's a
Natalie
couple ways.
Emmanuel say entitled over and over again, and Adam Driver answer yes.
Mhm.
Just by the way, I've had that conversation so many times where it's just like, yeah, you want to go to the club and do drugs, and I want to sit here and, you know, read about art.
Yeah. I mean, look,
that
there's a
would be your
couple ways
daily.
you
That would be
can.
your daily life, wouldn't it, Rob? You just
Yes,
yeah.
yes, thank you.
Yeah, let's get it here. But no, there's a couple ways that you could look at this film, and it really depends on what angle here. Like I said, I think a lot of this stuff is just going to like completely miss people's heads. But the growing message, especially towards
He
the end
looks
of
like
this film,
Salvador Allende about before he gets blown up. The
so
fight
you can either look
grenade.
at this from the front loaded position of, this is kind of like a warning of like, hey, if America doesn't get together, we're going to end up exactly like the Roman Empire, and it's kind of like modernizing it to lead us to that point. You could also look at it from the front end of position of this movie is literally creating and in a lot of ways glorifying the old Roman Empire, the old Roman culture. And if you want to listen to our Sunday night show, we talk about a revived Roman Empire, which you guys should know exactly what that's referring to. But that's in the front end of this, so you can look at it from two different ways. As a casual moviegoer, I don't think anyone's really going to think too much of this. They're going to kind of be like, "What the hell is even like happening here?" And they'll probably tap out within like 30 minutes. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a very, very difficult film to judge because it's like it's not like, we'll talk about bad here in a second, but it's like it's not bad to like the point where it's like, oh, this is horrible. This is one of the worst films of the year. Because like you can see the vision, you can see the ideas, you can see the point that was trying to be made here. So it's like it's followable, but this is a film that desperately needed an editor. This is a film that desperately needed someone to kind of be the middleman, a traffic guard, a traffic guard to kind of like point the actor, keep the actor, not the actor, I should say, the director focus on the overall themes and the overall what he was trying to create here with the film. And essentially, they just let an 85-year-old man go hog wild. And this is kind of like I feel like watching this movie. I was like watching like the dreams of Joe Biden in a lot of instances here in this movie. That's probably, I don't know
No,
if that's
no,
a
no,
good
no,
thing
no,
or a
no,
bad
Jacob,
thing.
I'm sorry. No, no, no. This movie's more coherent than anything connected with Joe Biden. All right,
Hmm.
it makes this movie makes a lot more sense than anything Dear Uncle Joe has ever said. Uh, so I don't know what you're talking about. No, 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 no. This is not Joe Biden's dreams because
I felt like I was watching the dreams of an 85-year-old man scatterbrain. Like I said, it's up to you to decide whether that's a good or a bad. And I guess I'll go ahead and give it with my final thoughts here. Um, it's definitely an interesting take. I will say this: we talk about, like I said, these soulless comic book movies, or these terrible comedies, or these films that have like really just like basically the studio just says, here's the script, shoot the movie and give it back to us in like 30 days. Like I get those type of films; they should be condemned. We want there to be more films like this at the end of the day. Even if it's an idea that falls completely on its face, at least there's somebody out there with the passion to try. So I'll give an A for effort. I would have to give a C for execution. And overall, I'll probably end up giving this, if I'm being fair, a 2.5 out of 5 with this film. Like I said, there's a lot to really admire about this film. There's a lot to go deeper into. You could study a lot of aspects of this film like all day. Like you really go back and pick this film apart in a lot of aspects. I just don't think that the final project was well put together. And people were talking about, oh, the film was like this massive flop. I think they just had more to do with the fact that it didn't get proper marketing. Like everything that anyone heard about this film was basically what they heard on like X or on Twitter or what. Like it didn't get the proper marketing that it deserves. Or hey, maybe the studio was like, I don't know how the hell are we gonna market this movie. Like, do you know what's going on? Because I don't know what's going on. So maybe that was probably the problem as well too. So like I said, this is a very mixed reaction for me. I think I say get like a 2.5 out of 5. It's probably a fair rating for me. We'll go to Rick and then Rob.
all right. Well, first, who the people who kept saying that this is going to win Razzies for the worst film of the year? Really, you've seen The Crow, you've seen Argyle. You really think that this is worse than those films?
Well, maybe
Honestly,
Shia LaBeouf. I mean, maybe Shia
well,
LaBeouf.
no, Shia LaBeouf. No, he went in for the cray cray, and I'm there for it. My view is that this was just a fascinating visual kind of unhinged production, but like I said, it was kind of craze. It's out of control and craze, but fascinating. I was just hooked on the craziness of it all, the visuals. I think because of my time with I Claudius and the Bombulo case and little Salvador Allende there, I got a little more out of it than most people might have. For me, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. I was just visually overwhelmed at times. Some of the visuals there are just really, really impressive for me. The score I thought was visually impressive. The costumes were, and I get the sense that I kind of know what he was aiming at, trying this parallel world between the Roman world and our world. New Rome, New York. I get that. It didn't quite work, and I agree with Jacob that Coppola needed an editor, a script editor, and not just a film editor, but a script editor to try to get him to maybe form a more coherent storyline. Because there did seem to be so many ideas just kind of bursting here, bursting there, never quite gelling together. But for me, I was just fascinated by what I was watching. As bizarre and outrageous at times as it was getting, I was just really impressed with the overall production. It's not for everyone. I will warn people, if you go see it, you have to see it maybe just for the overall look and the overall sound, the more the production elements of it than just kind of getting a coherent story. Sad to say, but for me, I really enjoyed it. I would certainly watch this over Argyle or maybe other films. So yeah, for me, it's a 4 out of 5. I'm going to be one of the few defenders of this Megalopolis.
Bob.
Yeah, it's an experience. That's what I'll say. I think the allegory sometimes, and in fact, most of the time, the allegory kind of is it's stone faced. Like it's very blunt. It doesn't quite. I don't think it quite works. But I can see, you can see kind of where Coppola's directing the story, the characters, the arc of everything, and I I really appreciate it, but I it's more like I appreciate it more than I like it. But there is a lot to like about it, especially for those that are cinematically minded, those who appreciate the craftsmanship of movie making. There's plenty to appreciate. There's plenty to like. The performances are good. They're just kind of over the top and weird at different moments. And whether it's good or not, it's idiosyncratic. It constantly throws different things at you. History, engineering, architecture, art, theater, etc. So there's a lot to appreciate there if you're kind of open to it. I will say that. But to me, there's just too many sort of departures into weirdness or you know I'm trying to think of the term, but things that are just kind of out of place, where it's like, okay, that's fine.
Incoherent.
Yeah, a little bit. But it is very entertaining, throws a lot at you. It's a lot of spectacle. Just some of the stuff is a little too on the nose for me to give it a higher score. So I land at about 3 out of 5. I do like its vision for the future just because it's hopeful. And, you know, I'm sorry, whether it's a liberal or a conservative perspective in art, which I say I try to stay away from that stuff, but we don't get a lot of positive views of the future or the current moment. And Coppola here is at least saying, for us to move forward at all, for us to do anything, we have to believe in our children, we have to believe in family. And because without that, we're finished. We don't have any hope. So I did like that. I like that, especially juxtaposed with Civil War, which is another movie I loved, which is sort of like, if we failed, like it's already over, regardless of what happens with the president or the fascist government that exists. It's like we get to that point, America as we know it's kind of over. So I like that. I like that both of those movies speak to very different visions of the current moment and the future. That it presents challenges and problems, but it's not it's not a completely foregone. So yeah, I land at a 3 out of 5. I think it's a good effort by Coppola, but it's very much something that's unwieldy and was exactly what he wanted to make: good, bad, and different.
Yep. Like I said, maybe because we're weirdo cinema people, we can see more of the positives in this film than maybe the average person would. But like I said, it's sad that even when a guy with Francis Ford Coppola, the only reason why he was allowed to get away with as much freedom in this movie that he was is because of his legacy. I don't see any other director getting away nearly with that much, and it just goes to kind of remind you, it's like I said, that old guard is dying out. Like there's only a few names left that really truly have any kind of vision in Hollywood. Once those guys are gone, we're gonna be left with a bunch of Rick and Morty and She-Hulk writers, and that's when things are really gonna get bleak here. So even if it's a film's kind of a cinematic mess, enjoy them while they can, because you're not going to get too much of them moving forward. And that's kind of what I have to say about Megalopolis. So varying opinions there. I think we're not completely opposite ends of the spectrum, but just kind of at different points where we landed on this one. So it's really one of those movies that you need to go see and judge for yourself, because you can basically follow any one of our point of views. But I don't know if we're going to be as split with this film here. This is Joker 2, or you can do the douchey French interpretation there, Rick.
Thank you. And it's Joker Folie Deux.
Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I was waiting for.
It's 2.
Yes.
Yes, or 2 if you're American. Well, man, where to start here? So 2019 was the last great year for films. I've said this many times before. I mean, I'm just going to keep repeating it because it's true. It was the last year that I'm trying to think of all the films that came out that year. We had Joker, obviously, was one of them. You had The Irishman. You had Ford versus Ferrari. I believe 1917 came out that year as well. There was another film called Extreme Job, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Like there were some really, really good, strong films in 2019, and it feels like that was the year that we kind of peaked. Uncut Gems is another one that came out that year. The Gangster, the Cop, and the Devil. What was it? The Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Like I could name it like a bunch of films from that year that were really, really good. And the quality drop off has just been massive. If you go back to the Joker here, the Joker was a film that, if you remember, had so much hype because everyone was essentially trying to convince themselves that this was going to cause like so many mass deaths because people were going to go watch Joker and just start committing mass acts of violence. And it got so bad that police officers were legitimately staked out of movie theaters in case somebody tried to do something wild and crazy, because that's what the media kept telling everyone. And after 5 years, we can now confirm that there were actual more instances of violence in the movie theaters for The Little Mermaid than there was for the first Joker movie. So all of that was a bunch of nonsense. All of that was a bunch of lies. But if you look at the context of what Joker actually was, it was a story essentially about a man, an outcast, mental health issues, who's basically been cast away and forgotten by society and driven to a point of madness, right? And the reason why it was such an identifiable character with so many people is because it's almost like that saying from the Punisher and Daredevil series, like you're just one bad day away from being me. And a lot of people, look, there's a lot of people in this way that feel that way, that if a couple of dominoes fell in the right place, that they might, do something, crazy that they wouldn't normally do. But when you push people to a boiling point, that's exactly where they end up. So people identified a lot with the Joker. Not saying that he was like a good guy or anything like that, but it was some kind of just a reflection of where we're at in society. And what happened was that this film, on a $70 million budget, made $1 billion worldwide. It became the biggest rated R film of all time until Deadpool and Wolverine beat it earlier this year. But it was a massive, massive success for Warner Brothers. And it was a film that really didn't need a sequel. I don't think anyone was clamoring for a part two of this film. They left it at a point where you can interpret a lot of things about, hey, if this is going to be the beginning of the Joker's rule in Gotham or a lot of other things. Like, we didn't really need it. It ended perfectly. But then they decided, you know what, we're going to do a part two. And not only we're going to do a part two, we're going to give it a douchey French title, and we're going to make it a musical. And we're going to add Lady Gaga to the film. And that's when everyone was all like, oh, God, this thing's going to go completely off the rails, isn't it? And the answer to that question is yes, this film went completely off the rails. But I want to start off with this before we even talk about any of the context of this film. Here's how I interpreted this movie when it was all said and done. I felt like Todd Phillips, Scott Silver, the creatives of Warner Brothers, and a few other people associated with this one, they were very, very upset about how people received the character of Joker in the first movie. And we've talked about this a couple times before. Like, put to your instance, like, we'll talk about this with Homelander, if you guys are fans of, like, The Boys or of The Boys, right? Homelander is a very, very popular character for people who watch The Boys. Yet we know that the creator is very, very bothered by this because he doesn't want Homelander to be a popular character. In his mind, we should hate this person because that character is essentially a caricature of Donald Trump. And if he sees that people are liking that character, in his mind, they like Trump and they can't have that. So they're going to try to go out of their way to destroy the character that they made because they want people to not like the character and they can't handle it. Those same people saw the way people reacted to the Joker character and got it in their heads that it's like, these people can't be liking Joker. They can't identify with him. He's a terrible, terrible person. It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a sequel movie where we're going to systematically, fundamentally, and in every way imaginable in this film, tear down the character of Arthur Fleck to where there's literally nothing left of him for people to identify with. And that's exactly what they accomplished with this movie. This wasn't a film, quote unquote. This is a course correction to essentially apologize to the progressive Hollywood circles about what they did with the first Joker movie, which is not supposed to be as big a success as it was. Rob, do you think that I'm completely off the scale there, or do you think there's something to it with this second Joker film?
I I said something similar with Beetlejuice, that I was just pretty much done expecting Hollywood to make good movies, especially that have intellectual property or franchise ties to them. And that's what this felt like. Okay, this Joker sequel felt like, hey, let's destroy what we just created. You
Hmm.
know, and again, I'm not a big fan of the original creation because I think it's kind of a hollow, it's sort of a hollow imitation of Taxi Driver and The King of Comedy, and you splatter some sort of, you know, cinematography on it and make it look gritty and worn down and corrupt and sort of deranged and like whatever. It's Todd Phillips is a hack filmmaker. The best stuff he did was comedies. That's really what he's best known for, and it's fine. It's whatever. People like it, and he used the DC property and character to sort of like garner attention. Because again, this would be an interesting movie to me if they just made it about the characters and developed them, and you know, made it this sort of tragic story of a mentally ill man pushed to you know, basically to believe in his delusions. That's interesting enough. Taxi Driver is one of my favorite films of all time. And when I say that, I mean literally top 5 favorite films of all time. So you don't have to sell me on that. Like that's already interesting, dealing with human psychology and loneliness and all that stuff. You could have tried to run with that and make your own thing. But they didn't do that. And so like this movie, if you thought the Joker was hollow, which I'm sure few people watching this do, because you know, if you like comic book stuff, if you like Marvel stuff, whatever, you're probably interested in that. But like this movie has no ideas. It's like we have this Joker problem that we need to dispose of. And so the whole movie is just a, I don't know, it's a giant, the messaging of it, if you don't believe what you just laid out with
Yeah.
like Hollywood and everything, it's like, oh hey guys, don't fall in love because they're all gonna laugh at you. You know, it's like
Yeah.
telling it's so nihilistic to the point that it almost has no personality, you know, inside of it, where it's like, hey, don't ever believe that anyone likes you for genuine reasons. Like, do you know what that is a seriously fucked up psychological place to be.
Yeah.
And even if you're just trying to show joke like Arthur Fleck's misery, there needs to be a pivot point at in some regard. There needs to be some kind of like, oh, all of this suffering is for a reason. All of this suffering translates into catharsis or something meaningful, and it never does. It just gives a middle finger to the audience, and that's who I feel bad for, because I didn't even really care for Joker, right? But I feel
Mm.
bad for the people that liked it, wanted to see a worthy follow-up. You know, you knew it was going to get a sequel making $1 billion, and then for them to make this piece of shit, I was just like, I even for me, even after all the bad movies I've seen this year, even after I've told myself like, okay, Hollywood just isn't trying anymore. They're trotting out $200 million budgets, and they're making the worst possible thing that they can conceive of. And yet I am blown away yet again. This might be the worst movie of the year, and I find myself saying that every month. So I don't know. I know we haven't even gotten to the movie yet, but it was so egregiously terrible that I genuinely just feel bad for the fans of this.
This movie system fundamentally is an fu to the people who actually enjoyed the first movie. And there's so many people, like Maurice was asking earlier, it's like, I don't even know if I like want to watch this movie or not. It's like, don't watch this movie because this film is an fu to the people who actually enjoyed the first movie. So if you go into the second movie because you enjoyed the first one, you're going to hate this one so bad you'll probably ruin your enjoyment of the first film as well. That's how I feel about it. I'll go deeper into this in a second, but I want to go Rick's thoughts here about what they were thinking with this film going into it. It's like, did they do this specifically to spite its audience? I feel like this is just a spite film.
Yes. Late in the movie, during one of the many musical numbers, I literally wrote, "They are laughing at audience." The people behind, the people making this movie, in front of the camera and behind the camera, they are laughing at us. They have contempt for us, and I want to say I gave Joker a 5. I gave it like a 4.5 or 5 out of 5. I thought it was one of the best films that year. It's also one that I would not want to watch again. I appreciated the character's slow descent into total insanity and was quite horrified at the end. And I was horrified at some of the audience actually cheering at certain points. It's like, no, you're not supposed to be shouting, "This is awesome," when he's like, when he punches out, when he punches the clock out, the guy near me said, "That was awesome." I was like, "No, that's actually terrifying." Okay, this is not good. It's the only movie that the Joker, the first one, the only movie where I literally left shaking the theater. Like I was like,
Mhm.
I can't believe I watched this, but I still thought it was well made. This one, I was. There were just it's just it's a mess. Megalopolis was a beautiful mess. This is just a mess because it really has nothing. There's no point to a lot of the things that I'm watching. There's it's so convoluted. It's like I'm waiting for it. Later on, I'll discuss a key moment in the film where I think you see the big problem with Joker Folie. But for me, I didn't see the reason to make a sequel other than money. Uh, it didn't bring anything to the character.
And they're
It
not even
didn't
going to do
do.
that, so that wasn't
Yeah,
even an excuse.
they're not going to. They're not. They're the characters that they introduce are not interesting or even relevant to a lot of what's going on. So no, no. I stand by my notes. They are laughing at audience. They are laughing at us. They just have contempt for us. It's a shame. It's a shame for the people who
This
actually enjoy the
film,
film. The first one, I didn't enjoy it so much that I appreciate it. But for those who did enjoy it, sorry, you're out of luck. You might as well just not even bother.
I will get to the ending here in a second, but just a perfect picture of this is that go back to the ending of the first movie, the whole scene with him and Robert De Niro, and how that left an impact over the audiences, and then you go to the last scene in this film, and it's the complete opposite reaction of what they accomplished in the first movie. But let's kind of set it up here about how we got to this point. So this one, Joker 2, takes place shortly after the events of the first movie. I think it's like a couple of years after the fact. Now Arthur is on trial for the murders that he committed during the first movie, so I think he's up for like 5 bodies and whatnot, and they're trying to essentially get him the insanity defense, saying that, oh, it wasn't really him, it was this alter ego of the Joker that he created in his head, and it's trying to make it seem like it's 2 distinct personalities instead of just like one guy. And when he's introduced back into the first part of this movie, he's very, very subdued. It's like kind of like all the craziness that happened a couple of years ago is over with. So you don't know whether he's really truly back to normal or if the Joker is still somewhere just waiting to be released. And it kind of feels like in a lot of places in the first half of this movie, they're building up to a big blow off, and they kind of tease the big blow off. And then, like, as soon as they push it in a direction where you think that it's going to go, they immediately pull the rug right back from under you. And like I said, this is a film that really just, not only want to say it subverts expectations, because really it just, everything that people liked about the first Folie, they had to go back and go out of their way to tear that aspect of the story of the character down to the point where there was literally nothing that the audience could say that they could root for here. And the only difference here is that it's supposedly a musical. By the way, the actual musical portions of this film is horrendous. Like, it's not good at all. Joaquin Phoenix cannot sing. Lady Gaga tries to do her best in here, but it's basically glorified cover songs that don't go over very well. I don't know why she's in this movie either. Maybe they thought they were going to get a bunch of queers and women to follow her because that's her fan base. Good luck with that one. But she plays a version of Harley Quinn. For those of you guys who are actually Batman fans, let me go ahead and tell you this right now. Do not go into this movie expecting the Joker Harley Quinn love story to be depicted in this film whatsoever. You are not going to get it. This is not going to be a comic accurate version. Tom Phillip made it very, very clear. This is not the comic book Joker. This is not the comic book Joker. This is not the comic book Harley Quinn. Do not expect there to be a whole bunch of Mr. J and you're not getting
Clinton,
any of that in this film. Yeah, you're not getting any of that. There's no romanticizing here. There's no abuse. All of that stuff, throw it completely out the window. It's not here. So if you're going based on that, it ain't happening. But the whole point here is that, Arthur finally finds someone who seemingly cares about him, or at least the idea of who he is and whatnot, and that kind of leads to a slow progression of his mental break later on in the film. Now, the reason why I firmly believe that this was a character assassination of the character of Arthur Fleck slash Joker that they created here is that this film, the trial section of this film felt like a complete humiliation ritual for a character where they're just like literally embarrassing like this guy, like embarrassing him, like reading, his notes that he used to write when he was living with his mother. He just bringing in all these old characters from the first movie to talk about what a loser he was and how he was always crazy and dangerous. And it's like you just see him like slowly breaking in. At least at that point, you think, okay, this is all going to build up to him flipping that switch and going full Joker. And you don't even get that. You don't even get to the point where it's like you start to feel bad for the guy, like after a while. But then again, we spent the entire first movie feeling bad for him. Like we've already relived all of this trauma to his life that got him to this point, and it just feels like a regression for where we were from the first movie. Do you agree with this, Rob?
Yeah, and especially if you're familiar with Taxi Driver and the King of Comedy, you know that that character, you initially do feel sorry for them. You feel you feel terrible for them, that the misery that they're in, even if it is self-imposed. And then you see, you know, you see the thing that you should have seen all along. You see that dangerous aspect of the character that makes you want to get away from them as quickly as possible, that you don't want to see anymore, that you want to get off the ride. That really doesn't happen at all in this movie. Even if it's there in Joker, that escalation of violence, that kind of lashing out, and really Lady Gaga's character is just attracted to chaos, or what she perceives as chaos. And when you know when the ending happens, basically, without trying to like give away too much, it's like that all of that just dissipates, and that illusion drops out. And I talked about, that willing to believe in your delusion so much, you know love can be part of that too. And so there's just the problem with the character of Arthur is that there's no spine. He's kind of like,
Yeah.
he's basically a simp that you feel sorry for. He has no self-respect, and this is somebody that probably has never received love from his mother, much less anybody. And so it's understandable. It is somewhat understandable. So there was, by the way, first half of this movie, I was like, I mean, it's not good, but it's now nowhere near as terrible as people were making out to be. And then, man, then it just fucking turns, and it's just like, oh, okay.
I think what happened,
it was like, oh my God. Okay. I see where it's going.
I think what happened is that even when you're watching the first half of this movie, you feel like that there's a turning point that's happening, right? So you kind of take it as if it's a slow burn, like, he's going through all this because something big is going to happen at this trial. Then he's going to like flip the switch back to that character again. So we're all kind of waiting in anticipation for that moment. And like I said, they just immediately pulled the rug from you. And when you watch the film, I have to be completely honest with you. Even though it says Joker in the movie, the Joker is not in this movie. Period. He's not in this film. It is Arthur Fleck through and through the entire way. There is no Joker. There is no Batman's greatest villain. There is no psychotic, like none of that is established here in this film. You are just watching literally for 2 hours a man relive the worst portions of his life. And then when you get to that last 20, 30 minutes, it gets significantly worse, significantly worse, significantly worse, onto quite literal character assassination here. Rick, what is your thoughts on the way
I just want to say real quick, just like a much better idea would have been, oh, she's not real. Just like Zazie Beetz wasn't real in the first movie. And that like him coming to the realization that she's not real yet was his inspiration makes him go basically break out into the Joker character again at or near the end of this movie. I would have at least like, okay, at least you're staying consistent. At least you're trying to, even if you're not building, you're kind of copying the first movie. At least you're giving the audience kind of what they want. That just as a basic idea, that would have been so much better than what they did. But now that I say that out loud, it seems like what they did was absolutely on purpose and just giving a middle finger to the audience.
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. Go ahead, Rick.
No, when I was watching it, I too, like Rob, thought, well, this is not as horrendous as I kept being told it was, especially when was it Kathleen or Catherine Keener came out, I was like, oh wow, I like her. I think this movie is good. Though I did think you could have cut out everything or most of what you saw before you got to the interview, the jailhouse interview. It's like you
Hmm.
could have cut so much of it out. But I was thinking it's not bad, it's not bad, it's not bad. Even with the musical numbers that I thought were okay. I get that this is in your imagination, but why? Why are they there at all? But once we started getting to the trial and once we started going on further and further, I kept thinking, no, this is just wasting my time. Please end this. At a certain point, when they're doing close to you, I don't actually remember who was singing close to you. I think it might have been Lady Gaga or someone or both of them.
Hmm.
I literally wrote, "Please stop this," in my notes. Please stop this. I was like, why am I here? Later on, I'll talk about again the point where I thought the movie kind of captured what was wrong, everything that was wrong in this movie. But it just you just see something go down and down and down and down, introducing characters and elements that are irrelevant or don't make any sense or just seems just pop out of nowhere, like that little fanboy that he has in the prison, and he's like, oh, I've never been kissed, and the guards say that you're a good kisser. I think why are we even seeing this? This is not making any sense. Who are you? Why do you need to be kissed by Arthur Fleck? What is going
I
on
talked about
here?
this last night. The little gay character that just hung around here in this
But
film and
but
really
why?
didn't serve any true importance to this movie. Then they kill him off too. So it's like even that didn't amount to like. There's a lot of things in this movie that just simply didn't amount to anything. It was just all to add to his pain and suffering, and there was no real like get back or like revenge tour or breaking point. It was all like, no, this is all just to break down Arthur Flack, and it was like, dude, after a while, like, like, what do you expect the audience to like think about this film? Because you're treating this character who's already been treated like dirt his entire life. You're treating him even worse, and then you just end on him on the worst possible like note ever here. I mean, so as we progress here with the film, he's already on trial for multiple murders. The trial is just basically one witness from the past movie after another talking about what a loser that he is. He's then going into this thing with Lady Gaga, where she basically withholds information from him that she's not the person that he thought that she was, and then she tries to bring him back, which they it's like, oh, like, by the way, I'm pregnant, because there's this really embarrassing sex scene that's also in the film here, Eric, as well, and that was kind of like her hook of bringing him back together and making it seem like they had some kind of relationship or connection that they simply didn't have. And I'm gonna talk about this point right here too. I think what separates the first film from this movie is that with the first film, they had an idea of what this character was. Like I said, you could call it like a taxi driver ripoff all you want, but it was, in fact, the character of Arthur Flack being mistreated by society, finally lashing out, getting his moment to shine and whatnot. And he, like, that's what basically what he was. He was a window into society itself. That's what the character was representing. In this film, they turned him into essentially who they thought were the bad people who liked the first movie, which is like the white incel type, person, socially awkward loser. Like, this is essentially like our opposition. That's the way they turned him into here. So there's a lot of interactions that he has in the film with certain people where he really just comes off as a loser, and it gets to a point where it's like, okay, now he's being embarrassed. Now they're bringing up the stuff that his mother said about him, and even his mother said that he was a loser, and bringing up all these nasty things about him. And that's the moment where he's like, I can't do this anymore. Now I'm going to go full Joker. And that's where you thought, okay, now we've gotten to the point where all of this is built up and is overboiled. Now he's going to come be the Joker character that we know him as, and you get only a small glimpse of that character during the trial. Like, he puts back on the makeup, he gets like his suit, he decides he's going to represent himself. So you think at this movie the movie is going to take a turn, it's going to pick back up, and it's like, okay, everything that I sat through for like the last hour is like, at least be worth it, because now here we're at this point of the film. And what happens is that the second that they bring out the true Joker character, or the character that he's playing here, they go back to beating him down once again, quite literally to a point where he never returns. So here's where the big contention is. There's about a 30-minute segment here between this scene and the very, very end of the film where they quite literally systematically break Joker's character. Like, he mentions at this point, he craps all over, like, the correctional guards over at Gotham. So the correctional guards essentially kidnap him, bring him to the shower. They strip him down of all his clothes, strip him down of all his clown makeup, and there is an implied rape scene because there's really no other way to take what happened to him in that shower. They take his clothes off, hold him down, and the next thing you know, they're dragging him back to his cell in his underwear, where you can only imagine something really, really bad happened to him there, right? So they throw him into the cell, then they kill his gay best friend, then he just goes back to the trial the next day. You think, okay, this is where he's gonna snap, and then he just mostly breaks down. Like, he no longer wants to be the Joker anymore. He no longer wants to be the character. He just breaks down. He admits that he did everything wrong. They find him guilty. Then of course, there's somebody tries to break him out. That fails. He finds Lady Gaga's character. He's like, no, hey, we're free now. We can go live our life. And she's like, yo, you're not the character that I thought that you were. It's over. There's nothing between us. He goes back to jail, and then here's the ending. So if you guys don't want to hear the ending, cover your ears for the next minute or so, or who cares? Some of you guys are not going to watch this movie anyway. He's been convicted of all these murders. He's sentenced to death, but he's still like in Arkham, I should say. Then he gets a phone call, or somebody comes to visit him. So he's supposed to be figuring out who his visitor is. And then another inmate who's there comes up to him and says, hey, I got a joke for you. And basically he retells Joker's entire life story and stabs him to death. And literally the very last scene of the movie is Joker's dead body, and you get a close-up into Joaquin Phoenix's face as the character dies, has his last breath, and then end credits. And that's the movie. So you quite literally raped and murdered this character to the point where there's absolutely no salvation for the image that people had of the character in the first movie, which means that now you put it to the point where even the first movie is completely worthless now, because where did that lead to? It led to absolutely nothing now that we had this whole thing in existence. And this just felt like, to me personally, the only way I can make sense of this is like, this was an FU to everyone who made the first Joker movie a billion-dollar hit, everyone who had all the memes of we live in a society and the whole clown get up and the whole you get what you deserve. This is an FU to all of those fans who endured that first movie, because they took that character that you liked, they really made him a loser, embarrassed him, assaulted him in multiple ways, and one broke every single joy and happiness that he had, and then quite literally violently murdered him as the credits roll. I've never seen a film do this to this degree. Like, I've seen directors like come against like the studio, where it's like, okay, the studio wants me to do this, so this is what I'm gonna do. Like, it's an FU to the studio. I understood that. A good example of that would be like the Matrix movie we saw a few years ago, where the Wachowskis made it very, very clear they didn't want to do the movie, but Warner Brothers forced them to do the movie, and they said, okay, if you're gonna force us to do a Matrix movie, then we're gonna tear down our own creation because we told you we didn't want to do this, right? I can get it from that perspective. I've never seen a movie go this hard in the paint against its own audience. Like, this to me, in a lot of ways, I still can't even fathom, even after watching this film 24 hours later. Like, it just makes no sense to me. Can you guys give me any clarity here, or do you think I'm spot on? I'll start with Rick.
All right. Well, I'll say that I found there was that scene in the trial where it's another fantasy, it's another musical number, and it's like the Joker is me, and he's killing all the jurors and the Harvey
judge.
Dent and all of this. And I've noted that it's not shocking or scary or a fantasy. It's like, why are we seeing this? If maybe he had done that in quote real life, then maybe would have. If he had had a few like devotees who've just gone so off the deep end that they've decided to basically hijack the whole thing and help him escape, then maybe you would have had something. Here, you didn't have anything, and yeah, Jacob, I'm gonna side with you that yeah, they really didn't care. The people who made this movie just really didn't care. I don't know. I don't care if I don't want to say I don't care, but the whole assault thing in the prison. Yeah, I mean, again, they're kind of like pulling their punches. I'm sure it could have been worse. I mean, perhaps it's a good thing that they implied it, but the little fanboy there, why is he there? Now,
Mhm.
I will say this, since you brought up the trial. I noted in my notes that when you had Gary Puddles come back, he's the midget who's giving the testimony
Mhm.
about it. I noted that that's what's wrong with the movie, or that's why you split the movie. The character Puddles is being very deadly serious. It's like, oh, I went through all this trauma. I was horrified. I have to have protection, police protection. All your fans are going after me, and here's Joaquin Phoenix doing this sort of crazed Southern
Mhm.
accent, and it seems like he's not taking it seriously. The other actor is taking it very seriously. So it seems like you're having two different things going on, and it's not making any sense. As for Joker's finale, and you do get behind the guy who stabs him, you do see him kind of laughing, and it's kind of looks like he's like, I thought it was like maybe smearing blood, or maybe he's cutting his face or two or whatever.
Yeah.
For me, I actually was not bothered by that ending, insofar as I guess this means, like I told you guys, and I put this on the Twitter, it means that we will not be getting Joker Menage a Trois. We will not be getting a third one.
Hopefully
So so
not.
so that's why I was like, I'm
Here's
thrilled. I like that ending if it means we won't get any other Joker films.
especially now. But one thing I'll go to Rob here. That court scene where he's talking to Puddles, whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Here's the disconnect here. This is how you don't really think of the full situation here, because he's essentially trying to like talk down the Joker, saying that, well, ever since you did what you did, I can't go back to work because people look at me a certain way. It's like, you don't know what it's like to be looked upon from like the people who you work with and blah blah blah. It's like, dude, did you not hear like the first 3 days of this trial where they're literally like running down? Everyone thought this guy was a loser, including his own mother would openly tell everyone about what a complete and utter loser this guy was. Are you actually trying to lecture to the Joker character that he doesn't know what it likes to be disassociated and ostracized by people in his community and by people in his society? Really? Is that the point you're going to try to make here?
In fairness, before Rob answers, you have to remember this in this movie, in this world, this is the first time we've ever seen a trial broadcast live. And for some reason, I just thought, what, they didn't have court TV in this world? I mean, I'm sorry, don't put that in when the world has seen many trials live as they happen. It's not even in this fantasy world of Gotham does that make any sense. Sorry,
What
Rob,
was
go ahead.
no, it's okay. What was really funny is when like they were like, so what Summer's saying is the trial of the century. I literally laughed out loud, and I was like, I mean, I know it's Gotham City, by the way, Gotham City, but it's just like, come on, that just sounds ridiculous. It's like you had a guy who, I mean, was responsible again. By the way, a guy responsible for a riot. Anyway, people dying. But no, it's just like it felt so heavy-handed. It felt like it wasn't really based on much of anything. And it's not even consistent enough where you could be like, well, this is part of Joker's fucked up psyche. It's not. It's just not. It's convenient bad storytelling is what it is. But no, the one part of the movie that I thought was funny was his questioning of his former coworker was just like, I'm sorry, what was the guy's name? What was his last name?
Puddles.
Gary
Puddle.
Puddles.
You really expect me to believe that by the way, that was a shade of the Joker character from from Tim Burton's
Really,
Batman.
Billy?
You really expect me to believe a man dressed as a bat? Anyway,
but that was like the one shade of the Joker that you actually got in the film, because he's on the trial for multiple murders, and the one thing that befuddles him is that the guy's name is Puddles. Like, that's the one thing that he can't get over, right?
But, yeah, but then he does this weird Daniel Craig Southern Louisiana accent mixed with a Cockney, and I was like, I am losing my mind listening to this bullshit. He won an Oscar. He won a fucking Oscar for this role.
I
like 5 years ago, and this is
Yeah.
what we're
yeah,
having to deal with.
I
And
wrote
real
in my
quick,
notes, why was Joker with Southern accent? I mean, it just seemed
but that's the thing though. So at that point in the film, you figure, okay, Joker's gonna take over this trial, and who knows, maybe he'll find a way to talk his way out of this whole thing. Even though, according to everyone else, he's super guilty because he's the Joker and he's like this maniac. Maybe he can find a way to talk his way out of this. And he just has that one scene with Puddles, and then just immediately gives up. Like just like, yep, nope, I'm no defense. I'm done. I did it. No, that's me. So, and I was like, then what was even the point of that? Like, what was
well.
even the point of that?
I guess maybe it's my my logical mind just taking over at certain points. Like, for example, they wouldn't let Lee, and I like that they call her Lee. They wouldn't let Harley just walk into the trial late. If it's this super packed trial of the century, she would have gotten there hours ahead of time to be seated closer. It's not like Catherine Keener, her character could just, yeah, I'm gonna make sure that she sits further up, unless they're like she's camping out overnight. That doesn't make any sense. And then the judge, if he was so bothered by all this, he could have cleared the court. He could have just said, you know what, everyone get out, except the people who are actually involved in here, so you won't have all of these people cheering or booing or what have you. He could have cleared the court. And I just kept thinking, why doesn't he do this? Why does he allow all of this? This is so inept. And again, it's just my mind thinking, okay, this is not what would happen even in Gotham. None of this makes sense. And if she's supposed to be like this great champion for him in the outside world, trust me, she would go she would go again. It's I'm sorry, Spencer, it's just the way I get hung up on points of logic. I get hung up on points of logic. She would have been there, she would have been escorted in like other like people involved in this, and because she would already be famous herself, she was in the newspapers. It's not making any sense. I hated it. I hated so much, and we haven't even talked about the musical numbers, and I hope we do. But
Do
Well,
Rob,
we
here, just
though?
really quick, let me and I'm not a big music guy, but there's even some music I really liked, but like it's the one number that Joaquin Phoenix does. He like the way they chose to execute that number, it was like and this is not the only one, but it's just like what was it for once in my life? For
yeah,
once in my life, I have someone who needs me.
it's
That
me.
great song. He sings it so terribly. And
Yeah, he does.
I even tweeted Joaquin Phoenix is acting like he can sing in this movie. Because it's so bad. It's like, and I get that it's like, oh, we're not really doing a musical, but we're doing a musical. And look, Lady Gaga can sing, meaning not that her music is good, but she can cover music well. Like she has albums with Tony Bennett. She can carry a tune. She's purposefully not doing it well here. So it's like it's on purpose to be like, oh, we're doing a musical, but not really, or it's a joke and we're not going to take it seriously. And my thing is, if you're going to do a musical, do a fucking musical, do it well, or don't do it at all and actually have a
Well,
genuine plot and story here.
well,
Because
there was
that's my biggest problem with the musical numbers is that they were done so half-assed and in this kind of just like, oh, another one of these.
no, they just seem to be random and just thrown in there at certain odd points. I noted in my notes. Uh, okay, so why do we have for once in my life? I mean, he's hearing it in his mind, and all the prisoners are kind of going along with this. But there's no point to that number. There's no point to a lot of the musical numbers. I know it's supposed to be fantasy. It's supposed to take place, I presume, in his mind. But if you saw Chicago, they did it much better, and they even managed to like bring in the trial and have the musical numbers like Razzle Dazzle, or we both went for the gun. That they managed to integrate the court and the musical numbers better. Here, it just seemed like, oh, we're gonna have this musical number here. Oh, we're gonna have this musical number here. Like when they're escaping, I can't remember the song that they're doing when they're escaping. I'm going, this is a ridiculous escape. Oh, like I don't understand anything that's going on here. If you're going to have musical numbers, hey, here's the thing about a musical. They have to serve the plot. They have to be integral into the story. Here, you don't have any of that.
No.
Uh, so no, it just
And
seems
not
like
only
strange
that,
numbers.
this movie did not need to be a musical like at all. it's like, let's be honest, if Lady Gaga wasn't even cast as Harley Quinn, what would be the justification for this being a musical in the first place? Like, there is
To
none.
have a big tap dance number with Joaquin Phoenix.
As soon as they announced that Lady Gaga was cast and this is going to be a musical, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is not good. However, I will say that I remember the news. The news got released where it was like Lady Gaga is going to be in a remake of of Star is Born, and I was like,
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds terrible. And then I whatever. I thought it was pretty good. So
It's
All
the
I have to
third
say
best
is,
version. It's the third best version of that story.
all I
yeah,
have to say is that it's been a long 6 years for Lady Gaga, because she does not look great in this movie. Like, I know she's not
no,
supposed to look great playing the character, but she visually does not look great. Like, I don't know what's happening to her soul or her body, but yeah, things are not going very, very well for Lady Gaga at the moment.
Well, actually, I was just a little puzzled, and maybe you guys could help me. Okay, so when we have that, I guess, explosion or whatever, and then we
the
see
car
her,
bomb.
yeah, and
Hmm.
we have her. Apparently, she's about to kill herself as he's singing to her the song in the jail, and I forgot what that song was. Then she pops up back. I was like, is this in his mind or is this in real life? Because it really could go either way. Because at the end, remember, he's singing to her in the tape recorder, and it looks like she's about to kill herself. But then we see her in those stairs, and that's where, like, oh, okay, we're doing, we can run away. We can run away together. Love gives you the right to be free. I was like, is she alive? Is she this fantasy? I'm a little perplexed. What did you guys think? Because I was like,
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
oh, okay, that's good enough answer as I'll get.
Yeah, I pretty much share that sentiment.
And
I
you get
mean,
right now the background real quick in the explosion as he's getting up, and you see the assistant DA. I'm going, do I see a faint suggestion of Two Face at this point? Because it is Harvey Dent, and he looks like he's a little
there
damaged.
was a very, very slight nod there to Two Face with the explosion, but at that point in the movie, like when I saw that, I like internally was just going, "Oh, f off, f off!" Like, don't try to do tease me. I'm like, "Oh my god, he's gonna turn into Two Face now." I was like, "Get out of here!"
Here's the thing: if Joker barely had a reason to exist in terms
Hmm.
of creating its own identity, its world, its characters, this movie really is that thing I complain about all the time. I call it the cannibalization of existing property, where you're sticking your hand up the ass of the puppet of the property that you used to love and used to cherish, and it's just its dead corpse flailing
Hmm.
around, uncontrollably trying to generate some kind of financial reward for its efforts. I mean, that's what this is. It's, hey, let's use the exoskeleton of Gotham City in the Batman universe to recreate these two movies that were made 50 years ago much better by Martin Scorsese, which is why, by the way, when Todd Phillips was at that round table talking about how important the art form is to him, and Scorsese's sitting right there as he just finished The Irishman, it's just like,
Hmm.
shut the fuck up, Todd Phillips, seriously. And so it's just, and because I guarantee you, Scorsese, whether he said it or not, thought that Joker was absolutely a comic book movie, like the roller
Yeah,
coaster theme park right there.
Yeah.
I knew it was just like, yeah, he's just too nice to say anything, at that moment. But that's what this feels like. It just feels like a completely empty effort, where they're, hey, give us your money. It's kind of like Batman.
Hmm. So here's where I'm at when this is all said and done. And by the way, I'll just go ahead and say this. This is spoiler talk for anyone else here. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I probably should leave right about now. But here's the thing. I really, really like the first Joker movie. I think it was the second favorite movie that year outside of Ford versus Ferrari. Like, that's how strongly I thought of that film. I think I even gave it a 5 out of 5 when it came out there. 'Cause I think everything in that film was done brilliantly. I think what sold the Academy Award for Joaquin Phoenix was his interaction with Robert De Niro in that final scene and how intense that was and everything building into it. I thought that was probably as good as a comic book movie that you were ever going to see. DC, Marvel, doesn't really matter, right? And for them to essentially look at the success that they had with that film and like I said, guys, not only did they get $1 billion, they literally got an Oscar out of that movie, right? For the
More.
filmmakers to turn it around, yeah, more than that, but for the filmmakers to then turn around a few years later and be like, we hate what the audience did with this character so much that we're going to systematically tear him down and destroy him to the point where there's nothing left. The ending of this film felt like the creative minds, whether it be Phillips and Silver here, was like, here's your Joker. Here's the character that you guys all idolized for all those years. Here's the character that you guys uh quoted all the quotes, all the things, all the people saying that I identified with this character. Here he is. We tore him down. We embarrassed him. We ostracized him around from anyone that he remotely knew. Maybe sexually assaulted him, quite literally, at least it's implied, sexually assaulted him. Threw away the one person in his life that actually didn't want him to kill himself, and then we violently murdered him at the very, very end. Now, some people have tried to defend this scene here at the end by saying that, oh, well, it's possible that the guy that killed him, that he was the real Joker all the time. It's like, shut up, just shut up. Then stop trying to save this film. He's already said he's not doing another one. There's not going to be a sequel. It's not going to be like, oh, now we get to follow this other guy. Stop it. They're not doing this. This was an FU to everyone who loved the first movie. They wanted to destroy this character. This was almost like they were saying, pointing to the audience when they were doing the close up of this character. It's like, here's your hero. FU, you lose. That's what it felt like to me. When you look at this film as a whole, it's not bad in the fact that, let's put it this way, it's not as bad as a film like, I Saw the TV Glow, right? Like, that's objectively a worse movie than this one. However, considering the first movie was a 5 out of 5 in my estimation, and this was the immediate follow-up, I have a very strong case that this is probably the worst film sequel I've ever seen, and I'm struggling to think of anything that can even be considered worse than this, considering where they were at in part one to what they produced here in part two. For me, because this is basically an FU to the fan base, a lot of the ticky tack things, like Joaquin Phoenix is good in the film. He's really the only thing that makes it serviceable. There's scenes in there that are well done, like it's not completely horrible, but if this is the central message to the moviegoers, none of that stuff really matters. I can't give it credit for, oh, the acting was great and the cinematography was great, but by the way, they hate you. This is a 0 out of 5 to me. This is a 0 out of 5 movie. I don't know where it's going to land in my top 10, but it's certainly going to be there. I'm going to have to try to adjust on a curve of where I'm going to put it at compared to some of the other ones. But to me, you couldn't have possibly produced a worse film from where you started. Like, imagine literally going from like Godfather 1 and Godfather 2 was a steaming pile of shit, and you could not even essentially Godfather 2 was an FU to people who loved Godfather 1. That's the best way that I can compare it in cinematic terms here. This is a 0 out of 5 movie to me. This is probably the worst sequel that I've ever seen. And I just cannot for the life of me understand why they thought any of this was a good idea. But here we are. So Rick, I'll go with you, then Rob will get your thoughts and rating as well.
Well, I was thinking that for me, in terms of sequels, I think it goes from Hangover to Hangover 2, because I love the first Hangover, and then I saw the second one, and
Mhm.
I thought, yeah, I'm watching the same movie. It's like a sequel and a remake at the same time. I absolutely hated Hangover 2. I walked out of the theater in like shaking fury. I was inches from running up to the screen and pulling it down. As for this, look, if the logic that some people are trying to sell this as, oh, the guy that we've seen in two scenes, this the scene where he kills him and a previous scene, if he's going to be the quote real Joker, like, why are we going to follow him? We don't know anything about him. We don't care about him. It's not making any sense. It's just like a random killing, and who cares? For me, this movie was thoroughly pointless. There's so many things that you could have just cut. I mean, we started the movie with like a Warner Brothers cartoon. Like, why? They get several mentions of a TV movie, and I was like, I actually would have preferred watching the TV movie based on Arthur Fleck's life up to the killing of Murray Franklin, than I would have watching all of this. This is definitely for me a 0 out of 5 as well. Whether or not this will actually finally overthrow Argyle, because I'm thinking, which would I rather watch? I had this problem with Wolverine and Deadpool. It was like I think I might actually watch Argyle over Wolverine Deadpool. I might want to watch this. I might not want to watch Argyle over this because it's like, oh, this is really bad and pointless. The musical numbers are pointless. The whole trial thing was just everything about it was pointless, and it was a wild coincidence that they managed to get a bomb, the car bomb, up there. For me, this is a total waste of time. I was like, I cannot wait to get out of the theater because I'm one of those people that just sticks to the movie until the bitter end. And like, there's no point for this movie. It's a 0 out of 5. I'm sorry that people hate their audience so much that they're willing to trash everything that worked in the first movie to something that they generally did not care and just expected to ride on name recognition. So yeah, 0 out of 5. Don't go watch this. It's just not, it's not worth it. You might
Don't even waste your time at this
yeah, you might
movie.
even watch Argyle instead. That's how bad it's turning out to be.
Rob?
So I don't know how much something like The Killing Joke is responsible for Joker. I don't know how much of an influence it was on Todd Phillips. I know it gets a bad rap. I see this all the time when in the barroom podcast chat among the comic book readers. They do not like The Killing Joke. I kind of think it's because it takes a sympathetic look at the Joker, who ultimately is a psychopathic killer. I mean, that's
Yeah.
who the Joker really is. The Joker doesn't have an origin story. That's why he's like an elemental, you know, he will always exist as long as Batman does. It's kind of one of those symbolic elemental things that's beautiful and also frustrating, and just it's just that constant. So that that is kind of where this whole thing goes off the rails. I think personally, if you weren't going to make a movie ultimately about how a normal guy can kind of go insane and become this complete psychopath, it's like it just becomes like a conversation you're having with yourself. And you get enough people to come along because it's in the Batman universe and it's Gotham City and Harvey Dent is the prosecuting attorney and whatever. So this is the sequel where I can't come up with another reason why they would do this, why they would take a movie that made $1 billion and turn around and I I think there's probably no hope that this makes its money back. I don't
No.
think it's going to be a financial success. So once again, we have a corporation that runs a studio shooting itself in the foot. We've seen this with Disney for the last 2 or 3 years. Warner Brothers, like they had a good year with Barbie, and they've had some successes here and there. I think they released the 2 Dune movies, but it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? It would seem at this point it's deliberate. I mean, this guy on Twitter today said this is the only way they would have let Todd Phillips do a sequel. Basically, is by saying you're going to do it this way. I don't know. I don't have any information to confirm that, but looking at what the end result was, it seems like that was the case. I don't know. Maybe Todd Phillips deliberately just shit on his own creation. I don't know. Ultimately, this is an empty movie. It sucks. There's nothing good about it. I thought some of the like the shot setup, some of the camera work was interesting just from a visual perspective, but that's really the only positive thing that I can think of when coming up with a final score here. So I landed at 1 out of 5, which is pretty much in the neighborhood of the worst movies of the year. So yeah, I would agree it's not as bad as I Saw the TV Glow, but it's definitely in the top 3 of the
Like I
worst movies of
said,
the year.
this is going to be a hard one to rank for me on the worst of the year because, like I said, objectively, it's better than a lot of the films that are on my top 10 worst of the year. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that this is worse than like Drive Away Dolls or like The Book of Clarence or Borderlands, but at the same time, the messaging of this film just makes it so much worse than all of those movies. Because at least with those movies, I can say that they just objectively made a terrible film. This was literally an insult to a fan base that, like I said, it wasn't just like, oh, a toxic fan base. It's like $1 billion in Academy Awards this fan base gave you guys on the success of this film, and you spit in their face. Like, that in and of itself is kind of egregious. And the fact that this was backed by Warner Brothers, a major film studio, backed this and did this really shows a lot about the current sentiment with Hollywood and how there's a complete divide against the industry and the audience. And this is probably the perfect way to encapsulate that right now.
Yeah, and kind of a little off topic, but it's kind of sad that they're dragging Turner Classic Movies into promoting uh this nonsense. It's like,
Yeah,
why?
Well, and Warner Brothers is actually my favorite studio. Classically, just all the movies they've put out,
yeah,
their relationship even with Batman. They are the brand that has put out all of his movies. And what's really sad is just like, you know, that was Batman 89 was my childhood movie, was the thing I grew up with watching the most and having that relationship with. And the fact that they're also the ones that have put out, you know, at least this Joker movie, where it's just a slap in the face to, like Jack Nicholson, Heath Ledger, all of the
yep.
all the great performances we've held dear for years for that character, and just having this psychopathic, chaotic villain, and to have him reduced to, you know,
A simpering,
he's
whimpering.
right,
But
a
put it to you
simp
this way:
character. It's
two
so
things
pathetic.
here. If you were upset about what Jared Leto did with the Joker in Suicide Squad, this pales in comparison to what they did to him in Suicide Squad. And secondly, not only did they do all this, they tripled the budget from the last film. So the last film was only like 70 million. This one's about 200 million dollars when it's all said and done. They'll be lucky to make 200 million dollars when it's all said and done. It's like this is going to be a massive flop for Warner Brothers. And in all honesty, I don't even know if they really truly care with what they were doing with this movie. This is probably going to end up losing at least $200 million when it's all said and done, because the word of mouth is absolutely horrible. Like
Yeah.
the fans and the audiences and the critics alike are slamming this movie. No one's saying anything good about this movie whatsoever. So there is no good word of mouth. There is no good buzz. This is going to end up losing $200 million, and it's like, what lesson are they going to learn from this? It's like you spit in the fan's face, and as a result of it, you lost 9 figures. I mean, what more needs to be said there?
I know that you guys mentioned the suggestion of the sexual assault on Joaquin Phoenix, the
Hmm.
character. I wonder if maybe that had a reason why he pulled out of that other movie where it was going to be graphic sex. I was like, maybe he just didn't want to go through that again, where they're again suggest. I don't know, but no, it's kind of a shame that you have a great legacy in the first Joker movie, which was highly respected. You know, nominated Best Picture. It wins like several Oscars. I know it won score and it won actor. It might have, I don't know what else it won. So you've got that, and then you take all the goodwill, you take all the uh, audience and the critics who love it, and you make this, where you have songs and you have big musical numbers that don't add to anything. You have characters that are pointless. You have a whole thing that's pointless, and then you end up killing off the character. I guess ensure that you never get another Joker movie or one with
Hmm.
Joaquin Phoenix. Why? I wish I could understand the thinking from the people who created this and the people in the studios. You
Like I
make a
said,
movie to make money.
I cannot believe that anyone went into this thinking that they were making a legitimate good movie. The only thing that makes a remote level of sense is that this was done purely out of spite.
Doesn't it sound like the Soviet style punishment of like like Stalin-esque communism,
Hmm.
where it's like you're going to be guilty of your crimes, you're going to admit what you did, like very 1984. You're going to admit
Yeah.
what you did, you're going to be humiliated many times over, and then you're going to die very this slow, painful death
Yeah.
where you bleed out on the
And someone
cold,
brought this
hard
up
floor.
and someone brought this up on our bounding review too. It's like there are like a multitude of movies out there today where if it's a female character who's a complete degenerate or a garbage human being, even a murderer, Hollywood has no problem with building like a redemption arc for that character, right? Or finding like a way to justify her actions. But if you do it with a male character, specifically a white male character, oh, that's a line that we just can't cross. There can't be any redemption whatsoever for a person like Joker because of the things that he's done. But it's like, what are we really doing here? That's my big question here, and it's like I don't know. I just don't get it. But that's the end of our night here. Those are the end of those two films. So one I would recommend you guys watch, even for its craziness. One I wouldn't recommend to anyone at all.
Same here. Same here.
There will not be a show here next week, but in 2 weeks on the Bar Room, we will review a little film called Saturday Night, which is supposed to be kind of the unofficial story of the beginning of Saturday Night Live back in 1975. That's really the only film that's worthy of doing a review or a topic on, unless you guys want to do that Lego Pharrell movie that I saw in the previews of this one. I just thought to myself,
I've not seen a
who the
single
hell
Lego
thought this was a good
movie,
idea?
so and I don't think we need a Pharrell biopic. No
Yeah,
matter
absolutely
how, no
nobody
matter
asked
what
for
kind,
this.
what kind.
Yeah, I'm still yelling at people to stop playing that happy song. What the hell did that even come out with? What was that movie? It's a Happy
It was
Feet.
the Despicable Me Too.
Oh, see, I don't know.
Yeah,
See,
Despicable Me.
I didn't see a Despicable Me movie till like what was that? The second Minions movie?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they could also stop playing Everything Is Awesome from the first Lego movie. So there's that.
Yeah.
Yep, so rough go with things, but hey, we are in the home stretch here. We're on the final quarter of 2024, which means that best and worst lists should start taking place right now. So start sharpening up those lists and seeing what we have left. I know there's still at least 3 movies that I wrote down and I'm supposed to catch up on that literally have been sitting on my catch up list for about 4 months. I still haven't seen them yet, so I gotta actually start make some time to watch some of these movies and get them off my list so I can put that one together there. But so Wild Robot and Transformers 1, yeah, I don't think we're gonna be reviewing any of those movies here. If I'm being completely honest with you, yeah. So
If they send me a screener, then
I mean, it's playing in theaters right now. I'm just not motivated to go out there and watch it. Just being straightforward with you, but I'll go ahead and give you guys the floor here before we wrap things up. We can start here at Rick.
all right. Well, I will be doing for the month of October the Mummy retrospective. I will have reviews again of the 1932, 1959, 1999, and 2017 versions of the Mummy. Just the Mummy, not the sequels or the spin-offs. I also have upcoming reviews on 3 films from 2024 that I have seen: Megalopolis, Joker, Folie, Deux, and Superman, the Christopher Reeve documentary. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, just more reviews, and still searching for a film that is worse than Argyle, though I have had a few candidates come close to it. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you, everyone. And hopefully, I don't know if I'll be here on Tuesday, just letting everyone know.
All right, Rob.
Yep. So we're wrapping up 2024. I wish I had a better idea of what's coming down the pike at the end of the year, but there's a Paul Schrader movie coming out, Oh Canada, that I'm looking forward to, and then I don't know, Nosferatu, maybe that'll be okay in December, and there's just I'm hoping there's going to be something I'm not aware of that's going to be good and surprising, because it's been a little light other than like horror movies and a decent movie like The Bike Riders here and there. So it's been a bit of a slog, but there's been some surprises, so there's always that. But as always, I'm going to be trying to get my reviews out. You can always catch that on my Twitter, which is there at the bottom of the screen. And I'm looking forward to getting into some Halloween or Halloween themed horror movies this month. I am looking forward to November, which is always Noirvember. I try to get in as many film noir as possible. And that's just frankly, a lot of people don't know shit about it. So it's just a fun opportunity for me to show off my knowledge and talk about my favorite genre of movies. So, but yeah, that's coming up in November. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
All right, then. I also let you guys know what I got coming up here for the next couple of shows. So Sunday, we're bringing back Shagsworth. He's going to be joining me on this Bible and show on Sunday night. So me and him will have a catch up and talk about a number of things. I know we had to catch up with some stuff that's gone on with him the last 6 months. Melanie Mack has been an interesting topic of discussion. We'll talk about her on Sunday and a few other things, maybe some prophecy as well. So that's going to be on Sunday night. Tuesday, we got the bar room coming back around. So we'll have some new topics to talk about on next show. And then, we'll figure out which movie we're going to review next. Like I said, I think the only one that's really interesting is the Saturday night film. So we'll pick up that one here in a couple of weeks. And then next Friday definitely won't be a show, but we'll let you guys know the next time we do a Friday night movie club. So for everyone who's who joined us here on Rumble and on YouTube here tonight. Thank you for joining us. X-Kid, Maurice, Eternal, Spencer, Meteor. Who else we have here? DK, obviously, Rooftop Korean, Keith, all you guys who joined us here tonight. Thank you very much. Adios, goodbye. We're going to start the outro and get on out of here. So see you guys later. Goodbye. Boop, boop.
It's over. Go home.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Okay.
Get out! Get out!
You get the hell out!
Never mind who you thought I was. I'm Rick James, bitch.
I'm gonna shove these fucking games up your ass. Batman Revenge of the Joker. Batman Return of the Joker. Batman Forever. Batman Return of the Joker on Game Boy. And last but not least, Batman on Commodore 64. I'm gonna shove these fucking games up.